The fall into the abyss lasted a few terrifying seconds. At the last moment, I sensed water below and we miraculously plunged into a large, cold, and deep underground lake. Striking the water hurt like hell, but soon our party was treading water and looking about, very lucky to be alive. I immediately spotted an obvious light along the northern wall of the underground lake, 2 torches flickering in the inky blackness of the cavern. While it was impossible to do any sort of thorough search from our position, I could tell that the lake was quite large and there was likely no other escape but to the north. The lake cold, dark, and extremely dangerous, we quickly swam to the north, recognizing that if we didn't escape the water quickly, we would likely freeze to death and drown, if a crew didn't get us first. We soon arrived at a well-lit hallway that was chiseled out of the northern wall of the underground lake, its construction perfect as if it had just been developed yesterday. The air was cold and damp, and a moderate breeze rushed past us, although the flickering of the torches lining the hallway seemed to defy the wind. "I am going to kill the miserable charlatan," Huelsman cried out, rushing Redfern as he began wringing himself out. Sainairs and Ariana quickly intervened, the situation quite awkward for everyone. "Why?" Huelsman demanded. "Why fool us like that and pretend to be altruistic?" Redfern looked away for several long moments, then found the courage to speak. "Honestly, I thought I was altruistic when I first met all of you. It's a long story." "We clearly have the time," Huelsman responded with biting sarcasm, looking about. "What the hell happened?" Redfern turned to me, unsure of whether to proceed. Wanting to know his story myself, I nodded affirmatively, my scorn for Redfern plainly obvious as well. "After Father and I left Kathleen a year ago, we journeyed to Chagaria, where Father quickly succumbed to the Nemphrid and became an ultimate. He wanted me to do the same thing, but I wanted nothing to do with it. Instead, I convinced him to let me try becoming an honorable wizard atop Mount Rebirth, perhaps even a genuine truistic. Mount Rebirth, the Valley of Destiny, where all truistics must endure a deadly ritual to gain their power," Sainairs confirmed, perhaps enlightening our fellow party adventurers as well. "What happened?" Redfern acknowledged Sainairs' concise summary, then looked away again, preferring to stare blankly into the darkness as his own dark story unfolded. "We reached Mount Rebirth about a month ago. A gauntlet of challenges awaited us, monsters, magical beings, a deadly riddle. We then finally reached the summit, where I learned." "Learned what?" Huelsman demanded, still extremely angry with the magic user. "You learned that to complete the ritual, you had to actually jump into the extinct volcano, didn't you?" Sainairs interjected, aware of the potentially lethal ritual. Redfern's harrowed gaze more than confirmed the statement of the priest, the wizard continuing moments later as he relived the nightmare yet again. I couldn't do it. What fool would leap to his death in the hope of somehow being reborn and made into a truistic? Who was I to succeed where so many others had died? And why didn't Father tell me about it before we arrived? Not all of us can take such a leap of faith, Sainairs said, the pun likely intended. "What did you do?" Redfern looked at him, but it was Ariana who slowly nodded, encouraging Redfern to continue. "Father knew what would happen, that I wouldn't do it, couldn't do it. He just laughed and ridiculed me. And then he withdrew the Nemphrid and told me to take it, to become an ultimate like him, to surrender my conscience and spend my life chained to his evil." Now lost in the moment, Redfern began to weep again, watching the events take place within his mind. "We struggled, there on the stairway hanging over the very throat of Mount Rebirth. And then he pushed me, I fell backward, spinning, out of control. I lunged for him, just to keep from falling. And instead, he fell, down into the crater. Down to his death." The magic user closed his eyes, still hateful of his father but even more hateful of what he did to him. Moments later, Father's body erupted with magicka. His magical power spewed upward and I absorbed it, my mind, my body, my entire spirit. In that moment, I became a wizard, no, a truistic, a hero to help save Mariga from itself and one day sit on the inner circle. I was sure of it. Sure of it. "So, you murdered your father atop Mount Rebirth, stole his power and joined this party believing you were altruistic when you're actually nothing of the sort," Huelsman cruelly paraphrased, his anger still quite strong and his own soul unmoved by Redfern's story. "You're just a low-level magic user, aren't you?" Redfern looked away again, his shame most obvious. Thinking about Red Fern's story, I explained in matter-of-fact terms that he did seek to do the right thing throughout the very trying experience, and even though his father was accidentally killed atop Mount Rebirth, Red Fern still did his very best. The response helped calm the hapless wizard, encouraging him to finish. After father's death, I decided to return to Kathleen, where I met all of you. At the time, I swear to you I thought I was altruistic. However, the power I absorbed from father is gone. You're right, Eswin, I am just a low-level magic user now. Several awkward moments of silence passed, the party sadly aware now of Red Fern's failed attempt to become altruistic but no closer to escape from the dungeon here. So, now what? Sainairs asked, the eyes of the party quickly turning to me. Considering the question, I noticed that the flickering torch on the wall a few feet away couldn't possibly be real. Even placing my hand into the heatless magical flame to confirm the hypothesis, the torches were not only magical but likely centuries old. It appeared we were in a very old place, a mystery we would now need to unravel. The hallway here stretching to the north and the underground lake to the south impassable, our only option was to head north, Eswin giving one last look of contempt toward Red Fern before drawing his blade and leading us into the hallway beyond. The pristine hallway to the south led to a grand underground coliseum, at least 100 feet in diameter and rising 50 feet to a dome-shaped ceiling above. Seated in concentric circles around us were hundreds of humans, dressed in regal tunics and apparently watching our every move. Indeed, we looked totally surrounded. If it came to combat, we wouldn't stand a chance. What is this place? Eswin wondered aloud, his weapon out and at the ready. The figures above did not move, however, and after a lengthy search, we discovered that they were merely mannequins made of stone, dressed and painted to appear like hundreds of human beings seemingly ready to cast judgment on those below. A column of light then began to appear within the exact center of the Colosseum, a ghostly substance that quickly took shape into something humanoid. Moments later, we stood face to face with the angry ghost of Zixxim, a tortured spirit who pointed his translucent arm at all of us. Invaders. Your transgressions are absolute and the penalty for this intrusion is death. Wait. Sainairs cried, perhaps the most accustomed of all of us to otherworldly beings. We're not here of our own free will. We then began to scream for Zixxim to spare us, blurting out all sorts of reasons why we should be spared. The angry ghost was certainly more than capable of wiping us out, and for a moment I sensed imminent death. I felt the tortured spirit invade my mind, my own living soul, the revenant probing for answers. Zixxim then halted his attack and became even brighter, summoning all his spiritual energy. A moment later, the ghost of Zixxim stood before us almost opaque, a tall, strong, human cleric dressed in grand silver plate mail and amazing to behold. He opened his ageless eyes and pointed, demanding to know one thing from us. You are not like the others who have come before, I can feel it. Tell me, are you lawful creatures, chaotic creatures, or something in between? Unsure of how best to respond, I opted for what I presumed would be the safe response, choosing the lawful option. However, Zixxim gave pause at my response, suddenly wary. Laws are for those who choose not to think for themselves. I warn you, should you choose the path of law ahead, this place will be your tomb. Zixxim stared at all of us with cold, lifeless eyes before continuing. I am Zixxim, a hero in my day who guarded a mighty city in the forest above. We were a champion of neutrality, no common law bound us, yet we were far from wild and chaotic. Respect and self-discipline guided our morality, and for centuries we thrived in a place few would dare even go. Then the missionaries came, with their righteous idealism and absolute faith. They tried to convert us, instilling their own sense of law and way of life. Some rebelled against them and turned to chaos, only to introduce the same intolerance shown by the missionaries themselves. In the end, civil war erupted and our culture teetered on destruction. The source of power within the evil root has always been the nexus that exists here, a portal to the realm of nightmares, a dark, monstrous, evil place. Nobody knows which side breached the portal to destroy the other, but in the end the legions of the damned poured through and destroyed us all. Not a single sentient creature within a week's march was left alive. Zixxim sighed before continuing his sad tale. As punishment for resisting them, the denizens of the realm bound my very soul to this place. I am to walk this wretched dungeon for all eternity. My fate is sealed, but what be your path? Again, Zixxim was asking us whether we were lawful, neutral, or chaotic beings. The ghost having just proclaimed his own neutrality from long ago, I elected to go with that, indicating that we would try the path of neutrality ourselves. Yes, find the path between law and chaos and set your minds free, Zixxim exclaimed, beginning to fade. Escape the labyrinth, protect the onyx seal and save the day, don't go to extremes. And with that the spirit of Zixxim faded away, leaving us warned as well as stunned. Don't go to extremes? Ariana reiterated, unsure. Are we being challenged? We won't be able to just fight our way out of here, Eswin wisely concluded. We'll have to think our way out as well. I am pretty good with puzzles, Redfern softly added, trying to be of some value. I will do my best to help. The ghost of Zixxim departed in the Colosseum cold and quiet. I nodded to Redfern with approval and then asked Eswin to take point, departing the massive chamber and heading east moments later. The Colosseum led to a long, straight hallway, large and highly detailed paintings attached to both northern and southern walls every 10 feet or so. After passing by the closest paintings, we stepped to one that depicted a brave halfling fighter carrying a young, wounded woman away from a pack of pursuing ghouls, and it appeared that the fighter would not escape. Examining the painting, the subjects within suddenly began to animate and actually move. Within moments, the ghouls overtook the fighter and the wounded woman and cruelly devoured them, all in horrific detail. The monsters then turned in our direction, their claws and fangs dripping with humanoid blood. The sight was quite ghastly and difficult to watch, and all of us stood there for several moments trying to understand what was happening. It's an extreme, don't you see? Sainairs uttered, genuinely shocked. The neutrals are trying to show that by trying to save the girl, the warrior doomed them both. Sometimes, sacrifice can go too far, an extreme to be avoided. As we watched, the ghouls then somehow leaped directly out of the painting and attacked. The battle lasted a few wild moments, our party able to quickly defeat them. Moments later, they winked out of existence and the painting reset to how we found it, the pack of ghouls again giving chase to the fighter and young girl. Continuing on, a variety of additional paintings lined the walls for another 100 feet to the east. It seems we're in a very dangerous place, Sainairs observed, warning the party. Look, but don't touch. Intriguing. Redfern blurted out as we passed by more of the bizarre paintings. Each of the murals depict some sort of extreme act, both lawful as well as chaotic. Further along, we found yet another intriguing painting, this one depicting a lone assassin about to murder an unsuspecting woman. However, the assassin was unaware of several godly beings looking down on him from above, about to strike him down as well in disapproval. Notice the gods in the background, about to judge the assassin for his crimes, Eswin observed. As the assassin slays another, so he slays himself. Murder is also an act of extremes. Being very careful not to touch anything, we continued east, the dozens of murals that lined the walls here continuing to animate in silence, all of them traps to trick and destroy us. We continued to about the midway section of the long hallway, then encountered yet another bewildering painting. This one depicted a wise, elderly human being acting as a massive balance, perhaps to judge the lawful against the chaotic. The painting seemed out of place here and we wondered about it. This painting seems a bit different than the others, Eswin began, carefully observing it. All the other paintings we've found so far criticize both law and chaos, but this one seems to represent neutrality as the correct way to proceed. Noted, I responded, still afraid to touch anything. Let's continue east. From what we could tell, we were exactly in the middle of the long hallway, as if the corridor was perfectly balanced here as well. Eswin looked at the strange painting one last time, then led us further east, passing by dozens more of the animating depictions on both sides of the corridor. We passed through the remainder of the hallway in fascinated silence, soon reaching the far eastern end. Turning north, we then stepped into a massive chamber filled with hundreds of walls that didn't quite reach the ceiling. It appeared we were about to enter a large, complex underground maze. This is unexpected, Sainairs commented, drawing a blank on how best to proceed. But I suppose we won't know what's beyond until we negotiate this labyrinth. The secret to a maze is always following the outside wall, Ariana suggested. We should mark the walls as we pass so we don't get lost. Most of us agreed and we spent the next few hours passing through most of the maze, taking Ariana's advice to mark the walls so we could find our way back if necessary. Rounding yet another corner, one of us then stepped on a hidden pressure plate in the floor and suddenly we dropped into a shallow pit. All of us were wounded to some extent from the fall, and I cursed my bad luck in not detecting the trap ahead of time. Climbing back out of the pit and nursing our wounds, we continued through the maze, moving more slowly in case any other traps were waiting for us. Our party soon entered a final chamber, its furthest western wall cleaved from floor to ceiling by a giant fissure and strong heat and light emanating from within. We had reached a dead end. Just as concerning, several piles of bleached bones laid about on the floor, warning of immediate danger. Searching them, the bones were of an entire adventuring party, slain on this very spot, and whatever had killed them had dissolved their flesh and all their belongings. The bones were quite clean. A loud, screeching wail then emanated from the fissure, and to our horror a group of large gelatinous cubes pounced from the wall and attacked. The nearly transparent cubes were over 10 feet to a side and were surprisingly quick, able to slam themselves against us to crush our bodies and then absorb them. 5 of the monsters attacked, and it was all we could do to put them down, burning their remains to ensure they were no longer a threat. While the monsters had been destroyed, the crevice beyond offered no hope of escape. All we could see and feel was hot magma beyond. It was definitely not the way out. "We've reached the very end of the dungeon," Red Fern lamented, as equally fooled as the rest of our party. Zixxim warned us not to go to extremes, and yet here we are at the far end of the dungeon. This labyrinth here was only meant to trick and destroy us. Suddenly it made sense. Once we had left the hallway with all the paintings in it, we had negotiated a tricky maze, fallen into a pit, reached the far end of the dungeon and defended ourselves against the marauding gelatinous cubes. Red Fern was right, we had done exactly what Zixxim warned us against and gone way too far within the dungeon. "It appears we will need to retreat, then?" Sainairs offered, turning back to the east. "That painting representing justice," Red Fern suggested, turning east as well. It was holding a balance, and was physically positioned within the middle of the hallway, all signs of neutrality. "Let's go examine that painting again." The suggestion seemed appropriate, and I asked Eswin and Ariana to lead us back to the hallway. Returning to the painting representing a wise, elderly man acting as a massive balance, we further studied the mural for several minutes, trying to figure out what to do next. With nothing more we could do here, however, Red Fern looked at me, then slowly raised his arm to carefully touch the painting. Eswin instinctively blocked Red Fern's initial attempt, but Sainairs gently pushed Eswin's arm down, encouraging Red Fern to continue. Fully expecting some sort of magical calamity, all of us were pleasantly surprised when Red Fern's hand passed directly through the painting without harm. It was some sort of illusion. Inspired, I stuck my hand into the painting as well, feeling only empty air beyond and deducing that we had found a secret hallway leading south. The party now recognized the painting for what it was, an illusion masking some sort of hallway beyond. Was this perhaps the dungeon exit? I nodded to Eswin, and he stepped directly into the illusionary painting, leading all of us into a dark stone hallway heading south. We climbed a short stone stairway and emerged within a large, oblong chamber lit by more magical torches. An impressive stone sarcophagus rested within the exact center of the tomb, while more murals lined the outer walls, frescoes we knew to stay away from. Unfortunately, we still didn't see any escape from this place. As we entered the chamber, the murals lining the walls began to animate, dozens of individual scenes coming to life before our eyes. Half of the walls depicted scenes of excessive goodness while the other half depicted extreme evil. I sensed that the depictions were both highly magical and highly dangerous. We didn't have a lot of time to escape this place. A bright light shaped like a humanoid figure suddenly appeared before us, transforming into the ghost of Zixxim. His warning was both intriguing as well as ominous. "You are the first to reach my tomb, but beware, the shades of our destroyed past will destroy you, too, if you don't soon escape." Zixxim looked to the dozens of images animated all about us, the magical constructs now beginning to move slowly toward us. "Seek the balance between law and chaos, and remember, the heart is where all answers can be found. Now, decide before these visions of our past tear you apart." Zixxim then disappeared, leaving our party to its fate. The conflicting images depicting both the missionary as well as monstrous invasions above centuries ago closed in and quickly forced us to the center of the chamber alongside Zixxim's stone sarcophagus. We then watched as the mistakes of the past played out before us, deadly three-dimensional movies that were about to destroy our party if we didn't act immediately. With only moments left to act, we frantically examined the sarcophagus of Huelsman, the ancient burial vault made of solid obsidian and still perfectly polished after centuries of exposure. An intriguing statue of Zixxim himself was chiseled into the back of the sarcophagus, but we didn't have enough time to search it completely. Indeed, we had just enough time to search the head, chest, or feet of the vault's lid, so with our very lives at stake, I had to make a fateful decision. Let's try the chest of the sarcophagus, I shouted, springing forward and examining the surface as quickly as I could. After a moment, I found a small, hidden metallic plate, and after sliding it to one side, I found what appeared to be a button, which I immediately pushed. As the images closed in to destroy us, pushing the button in the chest of the statue released what appeared to be a strong burst of anti-magic. A brilliant flash of white light inundated the tomb, and the negation of the deadly visions screamed in our ears. Moments later, everything was gone and the chamber went dark and silent. We had saved ourselves. The spirit of Zixxim then appeared before us one final time, his soul finally at rest. Well done, you see, my heart was your salvation. My sarcophagus was made centuries ago, containing an anti-magic bomb designed to deter tomb robbers. The monsters that imprisoned me didn't know about it, but I had to be sure you were worthy of being saved as well. My soul is released, now flee my dungeon, stop the woman above who means to usher in a new age of damnation and save the world. Zixxim's spirit faded away forever. A stone stairway was then suddenly revealed leading up and out of the dungeon. We had found a way out. It was now time to escape the tomb, get the drop on Sandaria above and still win the day. And that's a wrap of episode number 10, The Tomb of Zixxim. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.